Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So, today I want to talk about this topic because it's something that I've really been reckoning with over the past few weeks. I'd say even as far back as July, and it's not really going away. So, I think it's a part of this Lana era of mine, a part of this Vanity Way era. I did like a post on my YouTube about how strange this year has been, how there's been this I called it a branding crisis, basically, because like I've always been this graphic person. I've always been somebody that's like in your face or like that stands out in one way or another. And I like to be that way, and I don't feel that way this year at all. The first half of the year I was totally flopified, and then this second half of the year I'm like completely average. It's the difference between flop and average, and that's basically where I'm at this September, compared to March, where I was like totally peak mid, and very, very unhappy with my mid-sized princess era, extremely unhappy. It's like I just don't really feel much of anything about it. Like currently I'm in a stressful time. I've had to work a lot because I had to do a lot of financial stuff in August. So it's made, the rent situation trickier due to that. Basically, like I have been doing better, but I had to pay a lot of money in August. I'll just put it to you that way. And so it kind of threw me back a little bit financially. And so I'm really struggling, or like I'm not super struggling. It's hard to describe it. I'm just stressed. I have to work a lot. I'll put it to you that way. So I've been working a lot. I still do my gym. I'm very, very strict with my diet and all my iron stuff I have to do, my anemia journey, all of it. It's very, very, very rigid. Like my whole life right now is incredibly rigid. And I'm just, there's a lot of social stuff kind of going on too. And there's just a lot going on to a point where I would, let me just put it to you this way. If I had been MSP, mid-sized princess still, I would be crashing out right now. But I'm not crashing out. Even with stressful situations and overwhelm, I'm calm. And my moodiness is going away. And for a long time, I've identified with that moodiness. And I don't know who I am without it. And that's why I'm covering this Reddit post today, because I feel this way. And I want to see what people say about it. And I wanted to talk about it with you guys. And I wanted to know if you guys ever felt this way too. I think this is a difficult aspect of being average. You're really left with just you. When I was flopping, when I was mid-sized princess, I could be upset about that. And I was very upset about it. But now I'm not. And it's like, oh. Anyways, does anyone feel like they've lost their personality as they lost the weight? I was never a huge child until high school and the COVID pandemic. I was once 5'11" and around 180 pounds. A bit overweight, but nothing crazy. The highest I got was my senior year of high school when I was 6 feet and 272 pounds. Yeah, that's bigger for sure. I think it's getting close to morbid obesity. If you're not there, it's close. You might be there. It's been 2 years since then, and I've lost the majority of the weight. I have a bit more to go, but I'm happy to say I'm finally in the 100s again. I've just noticed since losing the weight, I've lost my personality. When I was larger, I could talk to anyone. I used to have a personality and people found me funny. Now that I've lost the weight, I feel like I've become a shell of myself. My anxiety has gotten worse and holding a conversation has become impossible to me. In some ways, I feel less happy now that I'm healthier. My self-esteem and image of myself is better now that I feel physically better and have received compliments by girls, but I just feel worse in a way. I feel like as I lost the weight, I lost who I was. I've even recently started reconnecting with an ex-situationship, kinda, and she hasn't changed at all, but it's a challenge talking to her. I feel the same way around my friends I've had since elementary school. Has anyone experienced this? People have told me I look more depressed now, and while I do sometimes feel it, I don't believe I'm depressed. Thanks. So, what I think this is, honestly, okay, so he's a Gen Z, I'm pretty sure. He's younger. So 2 years since high school. So what, he's 20? He's young. So I think what's happening, I think that he's definitely in a vanity weight era. So he's 6 feet tall. He's in the 100s. That's vanity weight territory for sure. I think what a lot of people may not understand is that when you enter into this era, you think of introversion and extroversion, or we'll say extroversion here, introversion here. It's like a sliding scale, right? Wherever you naturally are on there, when you're in a vanity weight era, you're going to shift a bit more towards introverted. And I think it's just because you are running on less energy stores. Now, you might not be as tired as I was when this started, when I was like very visibly anemic and I was like, oh crap, I have to do something about this. But it is getting better. I'm not as tired as I was, thank God. Still tired, but not as bad. But regardless, even being in a vanity weight era, I'm still more introverted. It's still giving locked in. You know, that's part of that locked in energy, is that you do shift a bit towards introversion. I don't know if he's still in a deficit, but if he is, I would say that's what it is. I think you're a little bit shyer, you're a little bit less wanting to talk to people, you're a little bit, more introverted due to, I would say honestly, the fasting effects. It's like a fast, when you're at a vanity weight level, it's challenging. So that's what I think is going on with him personally, or like my opinion, I guess. Because for me, like I am introverted and I became much more introverted when this era started. And I think even my friend Eric, he's very, very extroverted. And I think he's still barely shifted, but he did shift a bit. He went out a lot less in his vanity weight era. So I think it's something that just happens where you tend to, again, think of it as a sliding scale. You just go down a bit. I don't want to say it's bad to be introverted, but I'm not trying to give that. You just go down the spectrum a bit, not necessarily down as if it's bad. It's just different. And I think that can be hard. I think this phase actually, I think MSP, mid-size crash out era, and I'm just kidding. Like if you're having an MSP crisis, I think it's harder for an introvert because there's so much interaction from other people and so much scrutiny and people having a lot to say to you. And there's a lot of toxic ritualistic reinforcement in that stage. And I think it can be very overwhelming as an introvert. But I think that the vanity weight era, it can be challenging for extroverts because you may just not have the energy to be as bubbly or as involved or, all these different things. And that's where I think they could get probably some comments of like, you look depressed, you look sad, you're probably just a bit tired, which people aren't used to that with extroverts a lot of the time. But I think it still happens to them too. And for me, this phase is a little easier because I'm really introverted anyways, and so it's really easy for me to be introverted. It's like, okay, I never was bubbly or anything, so nobody's going to tell me like, oh my gosh, you look so depressed. People are just like, you look this, like you're just the same, basically. It's like, it doesn't change anything, really. If anything, I'm just calmer. I feel calmer. Even being so stressed, I'm calm, which is not like me. I will say it really isn't. So, but I think part of that is that general trend towards introversion. And then it's, for me, I'm not naturally a vain person. So it's really hard to care about anything. Being so introverted, it's like I just don't care about anything at all anymore in terms of like status and stuff. Like it's really hard to care, which I know that that's weird to say, but it's true. I just have to be real about it. Like I get frustrated with it, but I don't care that much about it. So, and I think I care less because of this era, Not that I'm like super crazy or whatever, but I just cared so much more about status when I was mid-size. And I probably would care more about it in the sense of like, I want to have fun, or I want to be a little bit more, I might like hit YouTube a bit harder when I'm in maintenance, and like be like, I want to do something crazy, I might go back to that. But in this phase, it's not like that. So I could see people kind of feeling like they're losing their personality. I think that's what's happening. For me, it's just getting to know a calmer version of myself, getting to know who I am without that moodiness, because I'm going to have to figure it out, and that moodiness of mine, it was always a concern. And I always felt like I had to deal with it. And now that it's going away, it's like, oh, that's a lot of mental bandwidth open. It's like, I don't know what the hell to do with that now. Anyways, let's see what some of the comments say about this. I know for me, as I got bigger, I felt like I needed to take less space, but at the same time needed to be the funny one so that people didn't focus on my weight. As I lose weight, I feel this grief in the sense that the persona/identity I put on/held on to for such a long time because of my weight is slowly falling apart, but in a good way. I'm learning that I don't need to attach a joke to everything, that what I have to say is important, but like you, I am also struggling to figure out who to be when my weight isn't an issue anymore. It's big. I'm feeling that right now. Or it's like, it's not as bad as MSP, where it's like I didn't know how to project myself, or I felt like I really had to push people to see me a certain way. I don't feel that way, but I think it's a bit of whiplash for me personally. And doing it publicly, it does complicate it. I think if I wasn't an activist, I would be very comfortable right now. I'm going to be honest. So I think for those of you guys who live a more private life, this phase could be easier, especially when introverted, because people just don't care. Like, you're just normal. You're just normal. That's basically it. So, okay. But I understand this too. Like, needing to be the funny one. I think for me, I used to feel like I needed to be entertaining or interesting, or I needed to do something like that. Like, I felt like I needed to entertain a bit, which I do like to anyways, but I think I am struggling with that a bit on like my channel, where I'm like, oh gosh, like I feel like this is a really boring phase of my activism and I don't know what to do about it. And I can't just like crash out all the time, like I made it work with Mrs. Princess. It was still hard. It was really hard from a public persona standpoint, because I think my attitude was so horrible, but I think my attitude could be so awful that it could be entertaining, basically. But now it's not. And I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I literally was asking Eric today. And he's like, you're just home for the holidays now. You know how Eric is. He's like, you're just home for the holidays now. You're like a Hallmark movie person. He's like, you need to just like do a Hallmark movie and rebrand. And I was like, fuck you. Fuck you. I'm like, it's not even the holidays yet. But I might have to play with that a little bit because it's so weird to be so normal. So this will probably be like my most normal holiday ever, you know? So I need to kind of like experience that. But it was funny, and that is how I feel. I feel like, I hate to say it this way, but it just sounds harsh, but I kind of feel like a washed up actress that needs to rebrand and come back on, you know, a Hallmark Christmas movie or something. You know, that's literally the feeling I have. I don't necessarily, maybe not washed up. I guess just somebody who hasn't been relevant. It's giving irrelevant, you know, and that's hard. Because I just, again, I don't really have the riz to overcome that. So I'm like, ooh. But anyways, that's a funny concept. So apparently, maybe we'll see. We'll see what we can do with that this Christmas. But I just don't know. It's giving that, though. Like, I feel like, yeah, like maybe an actress that's been out of work for a while that's trying to come back. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. That's what it's giving publicly. But again, if I was a private person, I would be really comfortable. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I gotta be real about it. I gotta be real. And I'm like, as an activist, I'm like, I have to do my best to keep eyeballs on the topic. I have to do my best, you know, to make it more entertaining or to do these things. And I'm struggling because I'm just normal. And it's like, how the hell do I package normal on social media? You know, I listened to Lana Del Rey, and she sings in Chemtrails Over the Country Club, and she sings about washing her hair, doing laundry, late night TV, and it's like she makes it sound so romantic, and I just love it. I love it in that song, and it's like, but how the fuck do I do that with activism? How the fuck do I romanticize washing my hair and doing the laundry? How do I do it? Like, I really got to be creative here, and it's like, damn. Because I know I can be entertained. Like, I can do it. It's like, I just don't have the energy. Like, when I'm out of this and I'm ready to be in maintenance, I am so ready to just, like, go crazy on here. You know, you guys don't even know. Like, I'm so ready, but I'm just not right. You know, I can't do it right now. I just can't. So, I don't know. I got to figure it out. And I think this is a part of it. And I think, honestly, I feel like a lot of you guys will be relieved to hear that normality does exist post downsizing. And it does. And if that's what you want, you can have it. And I need to make that clear, because I feel like so many people, they act like you can't be normal after losing weight. And to be fair, I wasn't looking for that because I'm crazy, you know? So I wasn't looking to be normal, but it just kind of happened. I feel like I like fell into it, and now I'm about to be a Hallmark movie protagonist, you know? And it's like I'm living in Derry, Alabama, and it's turning from like a horror movie with Pennywise to a Hallmark Christmas movie. Like, I think that's what just happened. And I'm like the basic bitch protagonist, you know? That's just a stereotype. And I'm like, whoa, what? Some of this, I think it's overlapping, like with my 30s. Like, I think it's also like a bit of 30s-ism. But I think like the combination of the two, it's like, holy crap, what the fuck is going on? But okay. I don't really have strong feelings about it, you know? It's interesting. But I have to talk about it. So I'm talking about it. We're talking about it. We're getting it out, okay? Okay. It feels like I'm unraveling and the person that's hidden inside the whole time is finally being exposed. Perhaps for a while you built your identity around your weight. A form of self sabotage for me was the fear of identity loss. Yeah, this is very toxic ritualistic. Where my subconscious mind sees being overweight as something positive, and I worry sometimes that once I lose the weight, I won't be able to tie my identity and attribute my failures to my weight. So this is very real. I think this is a toxic ritualistic drive. Identifying with fatness, it serves so many purposes. For me, it's less about that, but it can still be a little bit similar. It has more to do with public, with interacting with the public in terms of YouTube and being an activist and it affecting my work, which I need to talk about too, you know, because that is an aspect of my life that is being affected. And it could affect your life similarly in a different way. You know what I'm saying? So we have to talk about it. But I think talking it out and realizing it's going from a horror movie to a Hallmark Christmas movie, it's like, okay, we're getting to Derry, Alabama being that scene where there's Christmas lights and everything rather than me at the sewers, you know? That helps me. I'm like, okay, I see where I'm at. You know, I think some of it is also just orientation. You need to like reorient yourself within this phase. And that's what I'm trying to do. But it is strange. It just crept up on me. It's weird. It's weird to me. It's weird to be normal. I don't know how weird. I don't know what else to say. It's weird. I relate to tailoring your personality to account for your weight. When I was younger and slimmer, I was friendly and outgoing, but incredibly dry and sarcastic, and I had no problem being abrupt if I felt it was required. Now I feel almost apologetic for existing. I've turned into a doormat out of almost a fear of people attacking me for being fat. I've become the most bubbly, joke-cracking, self-flagellating clown I've known, scared to offend anyone lest their gaze falls on my form. That's sad. But none of it is real. It's exhausting. It's an armor I've built to compensate for how unbearably insecure I am, and I cannot wait to find not my old self, but the new me underneath all this. I have to talk about this, and this is going to be so bad, but whatever. Eric doesn't mind. I might actually have Eric talk. You know what? I'm going to have a conversation with Eric about somebody. We're going to do another moment. Because basically, let me just put it to you this way. Which, Lexi, if you're watching, you're about to die. So Eric was going to go on a date with a guy that is like a musician, and his whole brand is basically being a mid-sized princess. And he literally looks like he's maybe like 20 pounds overweight. Like he's barely mid some of the time. Sometimes he is mid, full on. I think he fluctuates a bit. I'm just saying this because he's like on Instagram and everything. Like he's kind of public persona. And his whole brand is being a flop, basically. And it's like, what would he do if he became just average? If your whole brand is that? And I know it's kind of weird to talk about branding, but in a way, people do brand themselves in public life too. And it makes me think that too. I'm like, I feel like as a creator of any kind, like if I were a musician or he's a musician, if I'm a YouTuber, I'm an activist, it's still creative. I have to be more creative because I'm normal. And that is challenging to me because it's like, you gotta raise the bar. And I think that a lot of times people that are entertaining or that like to crack jokes or they like to be, there's the Riz or the charismatic or, you like to be dynamic or funny or whatever. in some ways, the requirements go up as you become normal, and you have to be more creative for the same effects. I think because some standards get higher from other people, because you're not just funny because you're fat anymore. Or you're not just, like, for me as an activist, I'm not just knowledgeable because I'm fat anymore, or I'm credible. You know, if I was super morbidly obese right now and I was saying the things I was saying, I think I would have a lot more eyes on me. But I'm an average person, and it does affect it. You get me? It's interesting. And I think the reason I talk about it, why I'm talking about it so much from a public persona perspective, is I think this is also why you don't often see people lose weight publicly, because it's very difficult from a branding perspective. Now, me, I'm an activist, so I'm just going to deal with it, because my goal is not just about money or entertainment when I do this. My goal is about the point, right? So we're leaning in here, but I wonder if that's why so many other people don't ever show it or don't do it, or they try to come back when they're snatched, or, you know, when they're more dazzling or whatever. Then they're like, boom, I shocked you. Like, they try to do that because then there's like kind of like an effect, and you can kind of launch yourself back. But I think the effect it's had is it's left that impression that it's impossible to a lot of people. And I think that that's really important to consider as well. The overall like effect of the media, or like media, social media, all of it, on how people think about this issue. Because I think it's part of why people think it's impossible. Because again, the guy that, let's just be real, he's been flopping when it comes to Eric too. There's a little bit of tea for you. That guy, he would have to be more creative. He'd have to write a different kind of song than just always being the flop, the victim, or the one who's worried about how his body looks. It's a go-to. It's easy go-to. And I think people abuse that because they look for a connection, a personality, an identity in it. And I made that post about it too. So I'm thinking about it a lot. But I need to be clear that I'm not having personal issues with being average. I'm having professional issues with it. But I think it still has to be talked about. Because I think people can have personal issues with this as well. Okay, that's a lot. I'm sorry you're feeling that way. I think you need to work on your mental health just as hard as you've been working on your physical health. For me, the two are positively correlated. A year ago, I was depressed, low energy, and felt like a shell of a person. Losing weight has helped with all those things. It didn't solve the problem. It didn't solve them, but they made addressing those things much easier for me. For example, I think losing weight treated my undiagnosed sleep apnea, which was holding me back physically and mentally. By solving that physical issue, I had the mental capacity to confront my depression. And addressing my mental problems also fed back and makes addressing physical problems easier. Being not depressed makes being active and adhering to my goals easier. It's true. So this person is just really looking at it physically, which I think is great. I think it's always good to have a physical commentator in these conversations. So I'm very pleased with that comment. OP says, I have a very similar story with the sleep apnea. I was previously depressed many years ago and went on meds. I eventually went off them, but I feel like the depression never fully went away. As of now, I'm in therapy working on these issues and trying to prevent the medicine as much as I can. Okay. People don't like to talk about the dark side of weight loss because we work so hard for it, and there are legitimately a ton of positives, but I have definitely felt the same way. I lost 200 pounds and I'm literally less than half the person I used to be, and sometimes it feels like I lost half of my soul. Whew. I think that's where there has to be spiritual work, which I'm doing. So it's like I immediately noticed But again, I'm an INFJ, so it's like that's the first thing I noticed getting to this. It's like I have to do spiritual work immediately. But I do think I'm going to talk about that a bit because a lot of us do need to do this. You shouldn't feel like you lost your soul. You know, you got to like fill in the gaps or have it grow to take up what fat or weight loss or whatever was taking up. You know, that's my thoughts on it. It takes so much focus to lose that amount of weight and just as much to maintain the loss that weight management has taken over my life. Nope, I'm every bit as much of an asshole now as I was before I started. We can appreciate that. I have also experienced this. I lost close to 200 pounds and am maintaining that loss. However, I found that I lost myself along the way. I'm coming up on almost 1.5 years of maintenance and I'm just feeling like an actual person again. I think people who undergo a dramatic weight loss are probably more susceptible to losing themselves and their personality along the way. That's not to discredit anyone who loses any amount of weight, but I think it takes a much bigger swing of habits to lose 100 plus long haul. I call it long haul weight loss than it does to lose 10 to 20 pounds. Again, not discrediting anyone, but there's a huge different level of having to basically start over when you lose a lot of weight. I think too, when we look at toxic ritualistic, when we look at those types of things, it can be such a huge part of our identity. And it's really difficult to let go of that because then you have to do that work. As I told you guys, I have had an identity crisis throughout this phase. I don't feel that way now at all. I just feel like, once again, I'm maybe having a creative, I'm having a moment of, oh my God, I have to be more creative. The standards went up, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a great challenge. I think it's wonderful that this is my problem. And I think when I'm in maintenance and I'm ready to go for the gusto, this era, this time of developing my creativity, it will help me to absolutely soar next year. That is what I feel. I absolutely feel that. So this does have to be done, and it can be done because I don't have this constant hormonal crazy stuff going on anymore. So I don't want to say this is a bad thing. It's not. It's not at all. It's just another challenge, a new challenge, which is fine. Okay. I would think of losing a lot of weight as a do-over, but a smaller amount could be thought of as a correction. Okay, that's interesting. Both are equally impressive, but one is more of a complete upheaval in your life and the other is a little closer to a course correction. I agree with that. Within my language, I would say there's like tortured versus, lesser levels. Like if you have a tortured era, if you need a tortured era, it's a dramatic life change. It's very, very dramatic. So, and it's not as common either because it's so much, it's more rare. Whereas again, a little bit of course correction with some MSP energy, a little bit of course correction with small fat. It's definitely different because if I think about where I was then, like a year ago versus today, it's not that different. It's more like I just don't have all these fluctuating hormones and I don't feel crazy. And I don't know who I am without that. That's basically where I'm at. I don't know, not even who I am, but I don't know how to be creative without it. That's what it is. So, yeah. That's what it is. Okay. I sort of liken losing a lot of weight to basically being reborn. Okay. The old me is essentially dead, and he has to be. If I want to maintain my healthy weight, the part of me that maintained obesity has to go. There is no room for those habits anymore. I could see that for sure. I can definitely relate to that. For someone who is much larger than normal, eating a lot of those eating habits that got you to that weight are oftentimes because of some truly nasty stuff that's being swept under the rug. Toxic ritualistic, trauma, etc. A lot of people eat their feelings for various reasons, so when you stop eating so much, you remove a coping mechanism that you may have had for many years. True. A lot of very ugly things can start to appear when you no longer can cope in the way you've grown so accustomed to. Read up on transfer addiction. It's fairly common. For me, it was retail therapy, which ended me up in quite a bit of stupid debt before I got myself back on the rails. I'd recommend therapy if you can. I wouldn't call it addiction, I'd call it obsession, because I didn't have anything that I became addicted to, but I had obsessions where it wasn't about my weight or food anymore, but it was about, like I talked to you guys about my car, for example. I was absolutely obsessed with my car. There's a sound, there's this, there's that. I hear something. I don't know if it's gonna work. And then I had some experiences like that didn't help. Like, for example, like my alternator went out while I was driving, and like things like that have happened, which is crazy. But I think I kind of got desensitized by that point. So I realized when that happened in February, when my alternator just died, then I didn't I didn't freak as bad that time, basically, because I no longer was obsessed, if that makes any sense. So that's when I noticed that had gone away. But I would call it transfer obsession. So rather than an obsession with eating, it's an obsession with shopping. I've seen it a bit with my mom, where she becomes obsessed with like movies and TV shows and things like that. She becomes very, very obsessed as she's stepping out of the toxic ritualistic slowly but surely, which is great. So always like just find something harmless. That's the biggest thing. Like, don't like be ashamed of being obsessed. Like, I think there is a period where you typically have to do that because your whole brain is like wired to be obsessive when you're in the toxic ritualistic. So even though being obsessed with my car, it was very scary and like not great, it kind of has to be scary sometimes. So yeah, I suggest like horror movies and like maybe dark news stories, something like that. It usually has to be kind of dark or disturbing, but not always. It can be kind of cheesy. So, like for my mom, she's been obsessed with the After movies, and then she's obsessed with The Summer I Turned Pretty, stuff like that. It could be whatever, honestly. I'm just saying it's common. Just make it something harmless, and that's not, it's more about the obsession. So you got to have hobbies, you got to have interests, you got to have something to go to typically, because your brain is wired for that. That's what I would suggest. And again, for me, it ended up being my car, which it worked. I'm alive, Better that than me. Better that than how I look, So, yeah, just be aware of that. Okay, let's continue. I found myself, after losing all the weight and transitioning into maintenance, essentially having to start over, almost like waking up from a coma. Wow. Again, I don't mean to downplay being in an actual coma, but I had to relearn everything. A whole new set of habits and rules and guidelines. I had to basically rediscover myself and work on who I wanted to be. I'm just now figuring that out, and it took me a while. The person I am now, personality and mood-wise, is definitely not who I used to be. I am much more serious in all aspects and also very disciplined. I'm not the fat goofball anymore. I'm comfortable and confident in myself, and I will not squander myself for anyone. You know, some larger people try to take up less room by moving or crunching themselves into a corner. Yeah, that's not me anymore. The space I take up is the space I take up. I won't be rude, but I'm not going to move out of the space I occupy just for someone else's benefit. I'm allowed to exist, same as anyone else. I can't take up any less room. I think for me, the changes that I see is like, like, I'm so okay with not being the center of attention in a sense, but I'm also okay with it. So it's weird. Like, I think when I was bigger, it was like I had very tortured feelings about being the center of attention or not being the center of attention. Like, it was just, it became like something I thought about. You know, it was like a ruminating commentary, like when I was in a room or something. And now it's like I just don't give a fuck. As far as like being more or less serious, I actually think for me, I'm actually less serious, to be honest. I think I'm more fun loving and stuff like that. Like, I'm more open. I was very, very closed off when I was bigger. I feel so much more open, especially like open minded or just able to see the gray in things. And I actually feel a lot less judgmental, interestingly enough, at this phase than I have at like other phases. But again, I think I'm also just becoming less avoidant in general. So I think there is probably just like a rebalancing, but I don't think that you're necessarily going to lose your humor. I think for me, like when I think of the future and I think of being in maintenance, I think of like, I want to put on a show. You know, I want to get back in touch with my Leo, you know, very much so. I want to really, I feel like I'm going to want to show off basically later. But right now, it's like, I don't want to, or I can't. And so, yeah. But I just think so much of those things, like being competitive or not, being the star or the or not, you know, in the background, like those types of attitudes for me, they were so serious and so like I really thought about it a lot, you know, and it's like it just doesn't matter now. I feel like I can just flow, which I like. So it's not all bad, but definitely think about how it changed you. I think I'd like some comments of that if you guys can. I'd like to read about it. I think it's so interesting. Okay, anyways, let's continue. I also took some adjustment in eating. It also took some adjustment in eating habits as well. During weight loss, I was exercising, fasting, and cutting carbs, which worked for a long time. I wasn't on a low carb diet. I just found it worked for me for a while. However, as I got closer to maintenance, I found my body didn't have the fat source to sustain the exercise without eating carbs. I was basically living in glycogen and energy depletion and completely and utterly depressed because of it. Couple that with almost also losing my personality, it was a rough spot. Yeah. I'm having that moment with the anemia thing where it's like I really have to get my iron up. So even though I wasn't neglecting it, it was just a little bit below normal. And I think with obesity, low dopamine, the workouts, all of it, it was just too much combined, and the hypo and all of it. And I was probably already kind of low in iron going into the last year, and I think that that's why it happened. But I have to fix it, you know, which I think I might talk about that in this phase, how you have to address things like that. So that's interesting. So I'll have to talk about that. I had to revisit my eating strategy to properly maintain my weight because how I lost the weight wasn't working. I know people say to make sustainable changes, but sometimes you don't know what's sustainable until you get there. Once I got my macros more under control, my workouts improved, my mood instantly returned, and I still maintained weight because I kept a lid on the calories, but I had to change up where I was getting them. Sorry for the long reply, but yes, I did lose my personality and it took a while to get it back, and even then, it's not the same personality I had 3+ years ago. I am much more serious and disciplined. Interesting. I'll go ahead and read his response, and then I guess we'll call it a video. Thank you for this reply. It really resonates with me. I had the same issue with eating. Once I got to college and couldn't land a job, that slowly went away. When I got into bad moods, I would go on walks and still go on walks just to clear my thought. And I still go on walks just to clear my mind. I'm currently in therapy. Would you say the personality change came with age and maturing? I think for me, some of it definitely did. Like I said, I think I'm having like a drastic overlap of like 30s-ism plus normality of my weight. And it's like really hitting me hard. And like I said, I'm barreling to a Hallmark movie set by December. And I'm like, whoa, you know. But, you know, we do typically age as we lose, especially from a very big size. So, you know, I don't know if it's possible to separate it all the time, if that makes sense. I had a very similar situation to you where I used to be a goofball, but now I'm much more serious. My parents say it's just because I matured in college. It could be. I understand the diet change as well. I had to try multiple tactics to find out what worked for me. I tried eating 1 meal a day. It didn't work. I tried 3 meals. I felt bloated. I felt my perfect balance is 2 meals and the occasional snack. I also eat what I want as long as I just don't overeat. So many people say when you're losing weight, you must cut out what you love to eat. No, you just need to find alternatives or have them in smaller quantities. Yeah, this, I don't know if I want to like break all this down. We're probably going to talk about this type of stuff a lot in the diet culture deep dives, because a lot of this stuff comes up and I do have opinions on it. I just think it's very gray. So we're going to come at diet culture from a very gray standpoint because some people may need to. So anyways, we'll continue. The only thing I don't completely understand is why I get much more angry easier now. You might just have more testosterone, to be honest. It's often at myself, but before when people would F with me, either just for fun or to go to in my head, I wouldn't care and I just let them be. Now I genuinely get pissed and I insult them back 5 times harder than I need to. Or another example is when I can't do something right, almost immediately I scream like a madman at myself. Again, thank you for your response. I see a lot of you in me in this comment. Again, I think this could have to do with testosterone, to be honest, at these levels. So yeah, love that. But anyways, you guys, let's go ahead and end the video. I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Have a good one. Thank you so much for listening to my crazy rants. I appreciate you guys so much that watch these because I do have to process. And I just want to share the journey and what's actually happening. I know it can be a bit meta, and maybe it's not interesting to a lot of you guys, but to those of you who it is, thank you so much. I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.